All right, welcome everyone to this webinar on product data and AI, hosted by PIMvendors.com. I'm Stefan Spijkers. I'm the co-founder of PIMvendors.com, and we're here joined today by Bart, the CEO of Crystallize. I first want to start with some quick housekeeping. As you might see, that this is a webinar that is being recorded. So if you have to leave early, it is Friday after all, then that is perfectly fine. We'll be sharing the recording with you afterwards. And we also have a live session. So that means that you can ask questions, and I'll try to weave in those questions into the conversation and into the demo that Bart and I will be having surrounding, well, the new architecture of PIM. I probably guess that you have been using AI in your product data process, whether that is on the onboarding part, I would say the most logical step, the enrichment part, where you're generating descriptions or maybe images already with AI, maybe videos. I'd be interested to hear that. So drop that in the chat if you have some examples. And also, of course, in the publication part, where you need to map your product data and your product data model to the different, well, formats that your channels expect. So that could be your own e-commerce store, could be different marketplaces that have different requirements when it comes to that data format and the different attributes they expect. And you need to map all that data, or if you don't have that data, generate it based on the existing data that you have. That's great. That's, has been a transformational journey from the launch of ChatGPT, but we're getting to the next stage. And today, I want to, provide the platform to the future, or at least a peek into the future, even though, as they always say, the future is already unevenly distributed, but it's already here. It's already here. This is all existing functionality and live, so it's not really the future, but it could be your future at least, and where the AI and your product data is actually the centerpiece and fully sort of made available to the AI using the MCP server of your product and commerce solution, in this case, Crystallize. Maybe before I continue butchering it, Bart, could you maybe do a quick introduction of yourselves first and of the Crystallize tooling second?
Sure. So my name is Bart. So I'm founder and CEO of Crystallize. I've basically been building software companies for the last 25 years or so, software engineer as a background. And Crystallize is basically a modern backend for e-commerce, and where we've tried to kind of break some silos. We call it the product universe from starter to sale, which kind of contains both the product, call it the PIM space, content, call it CMS if you wish, and commerce into one service. As we believe that having all of this connected on the edge with super fast APIs, you're really ready for the current intelligent API economy that we all live in today. So that's a little bit background on me and the company.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, you're living already in the future. I can imagine that the audience is maybe still struggling a bit with it has maybe moved from the copy and paste stage where you copy all the product data that you have into a chat interface, you hit enter to get a better product description, and you then paste that back, you copy paste that back into your PIM or into your e-commerce solution. Could you walk us maybe through how that architecture looks when you have that made available through MCP, and how the world of agentic commerce reaches the sort of product data foundation that we have and should make available to AI as well?
So I can. So today we'll focus on. So we built this small tooling on top of our skills and MCP server called Flare, which is available as of already. And basically the MCP server, for those that don't know, this is a server that allows you to basically connect Claude or Visual Code or any agent to Crystallize, and where we're providing skills to query the data, get the schema, access all of the best practices and skills that we have added to our MCP server. So basically, it's the connection that agents understand to your Crystallize universe, but with a layer of also additional skills that we have provided, like best practices for data modeling, for querying, API signatures, and all of those good things. So, but to give a quick example to try to answer your question. So yes, cut and paste and translation in app and generating content. That's kind of a little bit day-to-day business as usual that you would expect. I'm just going to show here. Yeah, I just did it just before, so we don't have to wait a few seconds. But can you summarize my 20 last orders, right? So that's an example of how you combine the chatbot, which now is in Flare, but you can do the same inside Cloud or inside any chatbot that supports MCP. And basically giving access to all the data without having necessarily to click. And if you want to create some data or update some data, you can ask the chatbot to do that. So I think that's something. Today we're not going to talk, or I'm not going to talk too much about the editorial experience, but kind of this is one of the shifts that you definitely will see, that you have agents that got your back and can perform operation, have access to all the data. So that's kind of one example of how we can use the MCP server.
And I think maybe just for the audience as well, what Crystallize is a headless commerce plus PIM, right? So it is a product data layer or product data foundation with a commerce engine on top of it, which in this case brings together, I would say, both the data layer and the foundation, but also the prime interaction you want to have with that data. You want those products to be sold. And that allows you to have a fully, I would say, empowered chat with your product data, where with a traditional PIM, you could say, hey, change this. And that's great. That's already pretty cool if you can have a normal verbal command to your product data instead of having going into a clunky, I don't want to say your interface is clunky, but you have to go into an interface and change a product, or you have to do 20 clicks to get to the specific attribute that you want to change. No, you just ask you ask your chat to your favorite AI agent to change that. You can even do it agentically, but that's maybe for later. So that's the beauty, but you can also combine it with the insights that you have from the commerce side, where as you saw, hey, we have some high performing products. What is wrong with the lower performing products? Oh, we need to add Norwegian translations to them, and you can just have a conversation with your e-commerce manager, or however you want to call the interface at that point, to change immediately the things you want to change in your web shop.
And so I think for editorial users, there's so many use cases, but we know them already, right? And what we discussed earlier is I think 26 is the year where we see a big shift. I mean, we've seen big shifts already, but in the way we build projects. So PIM projects, ecom projects, how we're actually executing them. And that's something we've spent a lot of time on lately, to see how can we give developers and information architects superpowers in these types of projects. So if you will, I would be happy to show some more visual things from, and this will be nerdy, just as a warning. But
sure.
Because when we're talking PIM, it all starts with a data model, right? So let's say I would like to create a data model for my product repository. You can just prompt it here, say I want to sell books with authors, I want to food with allergens and nutritional information. So simple prompts, or you can have more verbose prompts. You can even ask Flare to do like research, so that it can generate a prompt for you. Then it will crawl the website, analyze the product data, structures, storytelling, combine that with kind of the best practices of data modeling that we have, which is Crystallize specific skills. Now,
Mhm.
I did this before so that we can actually just load a data model that is the result of this. And this is like a one-shot, as in we just provided the URL to Nike, and we here have the Nike products with some structures: running shoes, football, basket, lifestyle shoes, and apparel. We have some storytelling here with editorial story with featured products. That's okay. Launch calendar. Okay. Product category we need. And remember, I didn't tell it to do any of these things. It did the research, and even on the details of, okay, we have running shoes details, football shoes, boot, basket shoe. So within a couple of minutes, you have a fantastic starting point.
Yeah. So you're launching a new category on your web shop. You just ask it to research the top 3 players in that industry, and you have a full, complete data model that is top of class, that has the relevant attributes, that has the relevant everything, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And also what we find, and because we do a lot of data modeling, obviously, for different scenarios and different customers. And one thing I really like about these AI skills is that they're not lazy. So they're doing adding all the different properties and all the taxonomies and all the things that we say, yeah, we'll just do 1 or 2 for this demo. Here you kind of have a complete data set from the get-go. So, and this is quite impressive, to be honest. We've compared this with the manual data models that we've been doing in-house. They're like at least 90% there. And in many cases, much more verbose, as in, having all of the details. And then there's some, style code. Maybe there's a style code on the, I don't, there's usually some things that maybe you want to change or question.
Company specific, but it's even like the type of attributes, like list of values versus Boolean versus free text, like even that, and defining all that. I mean, I've been doing some data modeling, product data modeling as well, but just having those discussions or having those, like doing that research is such a pain, and it's super important work, and it makes sense to pay a consultant like us good money for this, but it's also not the most engaging work, and it takes a lot of time to do this well. Like if you're trying to combine the best of, like, for example, what you would do is, in the case of let's say building materials, you would take the different product data models that exist, like GS1, or you would take eTIM, and maybe some competitor sites and product data models, as far as you can scrape them, because that is already a pain, maybe less so now with AI. And you would have to then combine them them manually, and do the trade-offs and do the matching. Like, oh, what they're calling weight here is actually called a different there, or they do it as a list of values, and they do it as a, and then having all that compressed into 2 minutes, and this is a one shot. That's also crazy, right? And you can have a conversation with this, I suppose, on how to improve it, or add more sources, or go through that in steps.
I did a simple one shot. This is just to show, this is the prompt: food products with allergens and nutritional information. That's not too many words. And this is the data model that we get. And then we see that allergens it's a selection component. That's maybe fine, which means that it's just a label, right? But as you said, okay, now comes our domain expertise or additional insights or preference. It could be just that. I would like the allergens to be relation to allergen documents. And I don't even have to spell it correctly.
Yeah. I mean, I may have to cut you short, Bart, because you're costing us business. So I'm gonna end this presentation here. No. Okay, here we go.
This is superpowers for you and for everyone else. And it's like because the one-shot model will not be what you go live, right? It's usually you set up maybe 2 weeks for data modeling. You can condense that a lot, I think, by getting starting point. And it's not just a better starting point, but it's, and here you see we have the allergens as a relation to that, which is a design pattern that we prefer a lot, because then you can have a lot more information about the allergen. But it's a good starting point with some of the best practices. And we've done like all of our documentation. We've done tons of live streams, all of our blog posts on this. And all of these are combined into the Crystallize skills. And of course, for this is Crystallize specific. But of course, a lot of it is a generic methodology you can use regardless. But it also verifies that this data model actually works and can be injected into Crystallize. So this is like, we call it mass operations, description of how to change something in Crystallize. You can copy that and put it in GitHub, or you can actually just deploy it directly to a tenant. And it doesn't take too long. So that time to first success, that's really something that we're working a lot on. And here we're deploying this to my skills for tenant and basically updating the shapes, as we call it, the data structure in Crystallize, according to this food product, allergen, SEO, nutritional information, etc. So that's kind of, for us, a starting point. And I think just this is, I don't know how much time we've saved internally already just by making data models and kind of coming up with examples for clients. I can read knife also. But all of this is kind of using the superpowers of the skills. We've added an interface here with visualization of the data model and things like this. But in essence, you can do the same in Claude, just hooking it up to the Crystallize MCP server, and you have the same superpowers.
I mean, we're looking at customer projects where it takes 3 months to add a new category, right? And of course, there's also some data cleansing that is going to happen, and there's some there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. But being able to configure a product data model, well, no, not just to configure, but I mean, that's actually 2 steps that you're just combining in 2 prompts here in 2 minutes. But it is, of course, the sort of research that you need to do, like, hey, what are the attributes that I need? And the decisions, like, hey, what are the types of attributes? And should this be multi-selects or not? Or should this be a list of values? Or should this be required or not? Should it be linked? How is the whole data set connected? Then it is about, okay, there's a human in the loop because we need to have a governance structure and discuss what do we actually think. Like maybe there's one benevolent dictator, the consultant usually who decides how it should be done, or the implementation partner of the solution who decides it should be done. But you should have some human in the loop governance discussions. But then you also need to configure this in the tooling, which also often you need very specific technical skills for a specific PIM solution. And there's a whole world of PIM implementation partners that take a week to implement what you have just done in let's say, less than a minute.
Just imagine typing in all of this without any typos and having it being valid so that you can just insert it into your tent. I mean, that's kind of what, taking away all of the boring stuff, and we can add value for the insight and the knowledge and the refinement that we have. And of course, then based off of the models, you can also update the skills, and this will continuously self-learn also, right? So that's another aspect of it. So that's data modeling, which to me, I think that's the most exciting skill here. But that's not because I'm a little bit of a nerd. One other thing is like, okay, as a developer, I now have a data model, but how can I extract the data? And that's different from every platform. They have APIs, right? They have different API signatures, some best practices. So what we've done in addition here is like, okay, this is just a prompt I ran earlier, and all products under /products. And here it will summarize a little bit and then generate the query required to fetch that data. So as a developer, it's very easy to give me the last 10 cards, for example. Okay, here I have the last 10 cards. And that's a great starting point to customize a query or kind of get started with development. And this is usually you have to look up into the documentation. You have to start typing the query, the GraphQL, you have to type a lot. You have to specify what you want. You need to make sure that you have no syntax error on the query. It's all of those steps are just gone.
Yeah.
Because we guarantee that all the queries here, because it's validated and tested before it's presented, are valid. So that's also enabling you to, like here is 4 of the main APIs that we have in Crystallize that have different purposes, right? And the developer experience with having this Copilot is, I mean, it's insane. You save so much time in building queries. So that's kind of for developers, and that's also what's underlying when you see here find all products with Fender in the name, for example. It's the query engine of the MCP server that is first it's generating query, and then it executes it and just displays the data. So that's kind of the same technology, but here for you as a chatbot with visualization, and here as a query generator.
Skill, basically. Yeah.
So that's and as you said, the goal was to be able to sell products, right? So with Crystallize, that's also our goal, is to support the full journey of being able to start with your data model, make it unique. If you're Nike or if you're Mercedes, you will have very different product structures. And once you have, at least with Crystallize, it's normal, once you have your data model, you need to start with the structure. What are you selling? And maybe you know already, but let's say music store with in the guitars and amplifiers. And I want that in English and Norwegian. So, okay, what's this? So this is same side of the same story, different side of the same story, where you can give some context. And this could be a spreadsheet that you upload, where you have data, for example, and it will analyze. Now it will take the best practices of information architecture, and with the scope, that knowledge that AI has, and basically generate a so it's a product hierarchy basically in this context. So folder structure for categories, and you see that it's generating, and boom, we have here in English and Norwegian, we have guitars, we have amplifiers, we have accessories, we have brands, collections, some content. So because our prompt didn't define a lot, right? So it does them. Yeah. But then again, it's the starting point. So
that gives you questions, yeah.
Yeah. So you want yes, under accessories, top level, we want to have effects pedals, brand navigation. So this is folder structure for where to import products. You could drop a spreadsheet if you have your categories, or you can suggest it, and you can have a discussion. And the nice thing again is that once you have the structure, you can just run the operation, and you have the folder structure with categories in the languages that is relevant for you. So this is also something that, especially if you're doing it manually, it takes some time.
It takes a ton of time. I'm going to ask you something about building relationships, right? That's also a huge pain in the behind. So I'm not sure if that is part of the demo. It's going to be part, because exactly, building a shop or building a new category and setting it up correctly and making sure you have all the categories and it is a logical customer journey in every language is a huge pain. And it's not just a setup thing, because you keep on changing things. You keep on adding new categories. You first have only 2 electric guitars and you just add them under other, and then you start adding more and you have to make a new category, but then you also need pedals and you need an amplifier. And suddenly running a web shop is like everything in retail. You have to spend time on it every day to make it perfect. And with this, it's much easier and much quicker to iterate and improve and find the best way to serve your customers. I mean, that in the end is, of course, the goal.
Definitely. And again, once you have this, you can just deploy it to a tenant. But just to say, if you want to go back to like data modeling, or you want to do an iteration, I can load my current data model also, right? So that you have that as a starting point. It's a little bit messy here because it's instruments and pizza and ingredients and whatnot in this tenant here. but that's not the point. I created that mess, and now I can clean it up if I want to. And then you can continue here with the AI to iterate on this and refine the model and generate operations file. And then you can either update it directly. What you typically would do is add that operation file to your GitHub repo, verify it on stage, and then deploy it to production just to have a process in there. But it's very much that. If you want to add additional relationships or references, or you evolve your model over time, as we know. So it's not just the one shot or the initial. It's also for continued improvements. And so platforms are different. So one thing is we call it information architecture. It's kind of where products live. Products can live in multiple locations. But we also have something that we call topic maps, which is essentially stuff like definition of materials, metals, synthetic fibers. Could be color definitions, for example. Maybe we would have, let's generate something from scratch. Let's see here with photo angles. It's like if you want to classify assets with, is it a front above 3/4 front, like normal with cars? And so you can kind of just ask it to generate the taxonomy. And again, you can then just execute that on your tenant and populate it. So your data model, you have your folder structure, which could be directly from an import, like dropping in a spreadsheet if you want, and you can analyze that. Then you have a taxonomy, and this is a very, very simple one. But the point is the same, that you kind of add more angles. Yes, let's add the flat lay, whatever. You can iterate on this and ask it to be more or less verbose. And once you're happy, you can also then have the operations being executed. So, so it's kind of building. It's kind of what we're slowly getting at. We're actually just building a project step by step.
Yeah, exactly. So and basically you're providing an agentic core structure to build a web shop around, or to build a web shop is a bit of a commerce proposition around, because this doesn't have to be a web shop. It could also be directly integrated into an agent or into a chat interface. It can be integrated into an app, whatever. The output layer is just another layer on this cake. Yeah,
for sure. A big pain point is your product catalog. So what we've done there, and this is just the beginning of the tooling. We have a lot of big plans there. So here I can ask, so it will analyze my tenant. So I have pizzas. So it says ingredients. I have allergens. So you can ask it. Let's just do a simple one. You can ask it generate 6 common food allergens, and then it will match it with the proper shape, and it will basically generate some content for me. We've also integrated an image service here, so you can also get some images. So useful to, let's say I'm building a project and I haven't gotten the real data yet, but I want to verify the data model and have some test data. So you can really quickly populate. And surprise, surprise, this ends up in a mass operation so that you can inject it into your tenant. And if we want to do a different scenario, let's say I have a spreadsheet, which is what you can also do with other skills. Okay, cool. And here you can have different modes, because you talked about relations, and that's where I'm going to answer it. Because you have map and verify. This is using AI to map columns. Extract relations. This is if you want to have, I have a spreadsheet, and I have import, and we have brand, we have allergens, we have something that we're actually going to create a relational object from because of data reuse. So you can extract that. And we also have map and generate, which enables you to basically map and generate this into instrument shape, for example. And then it will essentially take the structure of the shape. It will take the data that I provided in the spreadsheet, and it will start mapping it to my product structure. And it will also manage relations here, which is typically what you would extract. Because for us, brand would be a document that you refer to with logo, with description, URL, and whatnot. And this basically enables you to import data without too much hassle, because it will do the mapping. And you can also ask it to, if there's missing properties, you can also ask it to generate that with AI based off of.
Because it's never, because it's never clean. It's never complete. There's always stuff missing or going wrong. But this, I mean, this is so much of what an e-commerce manager is doing on a day-to-day basis, right? It's just, I get an update from 12 different products. I need to update on that on the website, or we're launching a new series of products, and then I need to update that, or we're getting updated information on just the different accessories that I need to map to these products so that they create a set together, or that they create a bundle together. All these relationships, having the ability to create all these relationships just in a human language query is, I think, pretty empowering for e-commerce managers that generally tend to be more marketing focused than technical focused, right? I know that what we're doing here is pretty advanced stuff, and maybe you are not able to do this from day one after getting the hands on this tooling. But I know e-commerce managers who will be perfectly happy talking to the AI on doing these things. And if you've done them once or twice, and you know how to look at things. I mean, if you can use a WooCommerce backend or a Shopify backend, you can use this, right? That's not the question.
Yeah, and so with the data creation and the two previous skills, that's more in the e-commerce manager domain, right? So that's kind of touching more the day-to-day work. It started for us as a hypothesis, just to maybe I should have started with that. When we decided to make this service, it's like, how are we going to build e-commerce projects today, as today is 2026? We believe this is going to change, and what we've shown now is kind of the foundation. We've done data modeling, build our information, so catalog structure, taxonomy, and imported some products. In most projects, then you probably are going to launch a storefront. Even if you have agentic commerce or apps or different channels, you usually have a brand representation, right? I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So we believe that the day of the accelerator or boilerplate is kind of over in this year. That's marking the shift of that, because with feeding AI with the skills, and also the context. So I want to have a storefront generated with a shape. We call it shape, different types of products. I have the category as the folder category, as you can have different. And my products are located under products. Obviously, I have a lot of different data in this tenant, but it's products. I want bold, emotional design. You can prompt it if you want something else. Make the full ecom. And then you can also define which fields or components are available in product listing versus product detail. Essentially using the superpowers to generate a storefront. Now, this takes about 5 minutes, so I cheated. I did it just before. But it's the same, right? Where you essentially have a starting point. I'm not saying this is a complete e-commerce experience whatsoever, but essentially it gives you the full round trip of an e-commerce with your specific data model, and that you have built a storefront, in this case in Next.js, React, following a lot of best practices that we have provided. And we're not envisioning that this is the interface, even though you can ask it to add search or whatever. It will iterate on it. But this is where you will want to download the code here or push it directly to GitHub. And then continue in Cloud Code, which usually it means today, and iterate using the same skills. And remember that the skills that we provide here will be the same given the context as you have in Flare. So it's kind of taking the same powers then to a different environment, and also then for, was it here? Yeah. For developers to continue. So I think we'll see a big shift in how you're building projects. I think the scoping of the projects will be interesting. I think we will see quicker time to market. I think that will translate into more value creation, so that we, instead of doing the plumbing and doing the data modeling and all of the things that you have to do, you can compress the time you spend on that, and then you can deliver a lot more value. What about if you want to have build the personalization of the storefront using AI, for example? Let's do that. Let's spend time on that. Or if you want the checkout flow to be, again, personalized based on type of customer, what they bought before, how frequent they're returning, and kind of doing continuous optimization with self-learning. I mean, those are the opportunities that you have today. And so I think that's really the shift. So accelerators and boilerplates, I think, are kind of just a markdown file today, as in just a skill for your AI, and that's kind of what we're betting on here. With we think here is actually a storefront currently being built. You will get updates as it's building,
as it goes. Yeah.
So you have a different look and feel here.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, this enables, I mean, yes, you say, hey, it enables developers to create so much more, so much quicker, and maybe even much more beautiful. But it also creates a whole new category, basically, of experiments or ideas that, like a web shop just for a single marketing campaign, or a web shop just for around a single event. Like you host a corporate event and you want people to order stuff for that event, and you can just create a web shop in a morning, right? To do everything. Like, we're hosting an event in October, and we're now, you're still working with clunky platforms that are separate from each other. You cannot like give one prompt to Claude to create the whole interface and the whole engine behind it. And here it is, like it is the integration, I think, of both the commerce engine and the data layer that makes this possible. That's it enables a lot of unique new experiments, at least, I hope.
I mean, we see it already. It's amazing what you can do. I got a question this morning, if you could build like an energetic self-learning web shop that recommends products based off of your preferences, what you bought before, and that it updates and continuously learning. And that took like an hour to make. It's like things have changed. And I actually, for that, didn't write a single line of code either. So not saying that everything should be vibe coded and you should just push whatever. That's not what I'm saying, because most of what we did here was data that you verify before you deploy, right? So human in the middle, I still think that is very important also for when you're generating storefronts or generating front ends there. And we wanted to add that, not that we want to build a kind of a lovable clone, even though it's kind of the same technology as lovable, so it does the same, but with the context of Crystallize. We think this is kind of a quick way to get started, and then you continue in the grown-up editorial tools. Like here's another one I did with a different design. So you continue in your normal editorial environment, and you push to GitHub, and you have pull requests, and you do reviews, and all of that needs to be the same. But it's you can do a lot more in a lot less time.
But I mean, sure, yes, it is sort of like lovable, but I think the key difference is that the building blocks are different, right? So you have a scalable web framework, a front-end web framework that is headless, that is proven and battle tested. You have the data foundation layer in Crystallize PIM that is battle tested, and you have the complexity managed in a place where you don't want a lot of vibe coding, which is the commerce engine. That is also battle tested. So yes, it's lovable, but it's instead of you're throwing spaghetti at the wall, it's like, hey, you have these building blocks and you have this foundation on which you are indeed building the lovable interface, but it's much more solid.
Everything is guardrailed through our MCP and the permissions and the access control and everything that you have in Crystallize, right? So you have that, and you know that the checkout process is secure and it's performant and all of that thing. So it's kind of the getting to the place where you can add the sparkle on top, which is the front end or the customer experience or the app or whatever you're building. That time to first success is really really a lot quicker than it used to be.
I'm very curious what people are going to build with this, because it's so much easier and so much more flexible. I did mention that there's the option to ask questions. I can imagine that people still need to process what they have actually seen. I still need to process, and it's also like, okay, this is now input for the next level of creativity or the next level of commerce that you can, or PIM that you can do, because it's both. It's the front end building blocks, it's the back end building blocks. It's coming together in a way that makes sense, and I'm glad that even though it is a more technical or developer focused showcase that we had today, it does make sense. And the way this empowers people with some knowledge around AI, whether that is a technical e-commerce manager or a product data steward who would have needed an implementation partner or a developer to do things for them yesterday, today can just fix this with Claude Code without worrying that with the guardrails that the MCP provides, that you don't break anything. So without worrying that you break anything, change the data model or add a new data model or launch a new category or maybe a new idea. You want to launch a B2B shop instead of a B2C shop. Let's go, right? It's all these projects that you have been holding off until now, you can suddenly now start to execute on. That's, I think, the cool stuff.
Definitely. And we see that we make a lot of demos for clients, right? So we spend so little time these days on actually coding and setting it up, because we're just generating the data model, generating some import and having the storefront being generated, and then we tweak it a little bit after that, maybe customize the design with their logos and things like this. But to have a customized e-commerce experience, you can launch it pretty quickly, and it works, as in you can place an order and it's like the full round trip. It's not
it actually works. It's not a demo, it's not a tech demo. It's it actually works. You can actually pay and complete a transaction. No, that's crazy. I think sometime in the future we should do some sort of a gym race, but then for PIM systems or for commerce systems, where you get an hour to build or a day to build XYZ, build a specific scenario, and then we see who is fastest. But also, I think in general, I just think that this is such an interesting compression of time, right? That's basically the thing, because the work isn't different. It's not done maybe by AI. You're still doing the same things. You still need a human to think about the creative ideas and experiments that you want to run and all the growth that you want to achieve. But it's so much faster. You can launch a new store within an hour instead of in a
and
month.
Especially once you have the data, because one thing is to get the data in place, right? But after that is done, to extract even just a subcategory or a few products and build a storefront, that's really, really quick. Yeah, we see, and just things like data import. We had an example where I actually did a data import that would have, with the UI and everything there, would probably taken 2 weeks if we were truthful on the import. So it was a spreadsheet type import with mapping and verification and the usual things. With the skills, it took 40 minutes and it was ready and working and in production. So that's like.
But is the dirty secret part that you actually built this for yourselves to do demos quicker, prepare demos quicker, and now it's good enough to showcase to the world?
Of course, we built it for ourselves.
Yeah.
No, to be honest, the way it started was as a training suite for building the skills, and then we needed something to use the skills. And then it was a recursion around that. So the foundation is really the knowledge and the structure and the data modeling best practices, design patterns, as we call it, that we have trained all of this on. So that's kind of where the magic started. But but it's built for us.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. I mean, this is something we have been seeing with our customers as well, where when we do selections and what we then ask vendors to do is not just showcase their typical demo, right? That's great. That's cool, but it's entertainment. It's not real information that you're getting there. Because everyone can show a very nice pre-prepared demo, right? We ask the vendors to demonstrate the actual use cases that the customer faces and do that in an interface that the actual user would be using. And we're seeing a shift from and a difference being created by tools that basically start on the morning that they do the demo. Haven't had that yet, but I did have people start the day before. And then showcase the whole flow as described in 4 or 5 scenarios that we asked them to prepare with customer detail. And tools that say, oh, that is super complicated. We have prepared 3 of the demos, 3 of the scenarios to demo today. If you want to see the other 2, we can send them later, or we can actually need to do a proof of concept together. Because it costs so much time and effort and money to actually showcase that in real life that they need a POC. They need to be paid to do what others can show in 40 minutes, as you just demonstrated.
For sure, and we've seen that a lot. As you know, we're in a lot of those demos, and one thing that we use this for also is to make apps for Crystallize, so that user interface apps that solves a particular scenario, right? Because it might be something very, very specific. It could be, I don't know, specific PDF catalog generation for a B2B, whatever, something very specific that we wouldn't add as a feature in Crystallize because it's customer specific, but it's excellent as an app that is essentially vibe coded within half an hour kind of thing. So we do a lot of those and to showcase this is what you can do with the MCP and the skills assisted by Claude in very little time to tailor kind of the editorial user interface. And I think this is one of the big values after this is exactly that, where let's say it took 2 weeks plus to do it before. Now it's done within an hour. I mean, these typical things. So now you can actually do it and afford it and have it customized in the project, and it doesn't have to be a huge cost to do it. So that shift is really big.
It's real. And I think what you're saying with the sort of custom app is a perfect example of how this can help not just sort of serve the customer, but in a scalable way. Because the lovable example would be like, you vibe code a solution from scratch to serve that customer, right? But you immediately get to the maintenance part, and within 6 months or maybe a year, or I don't know, I don't want to even think about the security risks involved if you keep this running and exposed somewhere, but it's maintained by someone who doesn't know anything except for the vibe coding. Where here instead you have the basic building block locked in place, and you just create an interface or an interaction
connect the
interface.
dots, data from A to B, or molding data, or improving, which is the day-to-day operations. And so it really is, and for us it was a shift actually late last year when we had declared Opus 4.5, and now with 4.6. And now we have a Mythos on the soon to be released. So
officially, it's an interesting world to live in, and I'm super intrigued by the fact that by being so, you call it API first,
right? Yeah, intelligent API economy is what we call it. Which means that everything is an API, and you can connect everything. And with the context and the skills that we have in the MCP, it's the agents are not guessing so much and not hallucinating that much, and it's kind of hitting the target better. So we've been doing some tests the last 3-ish years. Every few months, like try to build this. Okay, it's not there yet, but now it's at the point where, for storefronts and for apps integrations, it really, really works.
I'm inspired today. I hope the audience is still with us on this Friday afternoon. If not, we'll be sending the recording to you, or even the sort of tidbits and most interesting, engaging tidbits. Maybe your head spins. Mine almost, and I've had some time to prepare even. But if you're done spinning, I would say check crystallize.com or reach out to Bart on LinkedIn. You have a running webinar schedule, I think, also on LinkedIn on the site, where you can join in and check the recordings, I think, from previous webinars, but also check in on new webinars, where probably this will come back sometime. I really appreciate you taking time today, Bart, to showcase this in such a lightning fashion, really, because we built a web shop in 55 minutes, and I'm really looking forward to what people are going to build with this. So please keep me posted. Let me know what people built and how creative they got into applying these different building blocks. And I really hope to see you back sometime soon. Thanks a lot.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. For the rest of the audience, thanks a lot for joining us as well today. And I really invite you to keep an eye out on our platform for the next webinars that we have scheduled. We have a lot of webinars coming up this month and the next. And I'd also like to invite you to our Product Content Europe event coming up in the beginning of October. So keep an eye out on our LinkedIn page for more information on that as well. Have a good weekend, and see you again. Bye-bye.